Hey, we are live on the Phoenix RIA for our Tuesday Red Room episode number 74. I'm here as always with Luke, and we have Karl.
Oh yeah.
He is jumping on. Obviously, we have let the NAR decision kind of settle in. And Luke and I were talking, and Karl's name came up, and we were like, I've had lunch with Karl. He's really dialed in with his marketing and his systems and all that kind of stuff. So when Luke mentioned, "Hey, we should get Karl on to talk about the NAR stuff," I was like,
Heck yeah.
He's probably got a system all in place for his agents to start having the conversation."
Dude, I've been waiting for this day. I've just been waiting. So let me just put it on record, and it's on my YouTube. You can go back and look at it. 2021, I called this shot by shot, right? Play by play.
Okay.
And I literally put out a video that said back in 2021, it was like buyer commissions are going away. And the comments that I got.
Oh, really?
Were like, "You're out of your mind. This will never happen." And I'm like, okay, cool. Just time will tell. And here we are. 3 years later.
Look at that. Called it out.
Dude, I feel vindicated. Is that the right word for that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, totally. So we've been ready for this thing, and honestly, I've been welcoming it. And I genuinely, I'd love to get you guys to take on it, but I genuinely think that it's a great thing for the consumers. And so anytime that an industry realigns itself with a consumer, I think is going to be a good thing for us. And realtors have a really, really bad reputation. I think we're like somewhere between lawyers and used car salespeople,
right?
And the reality is probably lower than that. But when it comes to how buyers agents have been paid for, the last 100 years, there's definitely a disconnect, and something needed to change, right? And I don't know, in my opinion, if this lawsuit goes far enough. And I do think that the Justice Department is going to come in and have a final say in this thing before it actually gets approved by a judge. So, keep in mind too, this hasn't been approved by a judge yet. The settlement offer needs to get ratified. And so we'll probably see that happen within the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm guessing, just because that timeline is approaching.
Right.
But, the lawyers got to get their last say in, Justice Department's got to get their say in. And I think there's an opportunity here for us as buyer's agents to get in front of this thing and really realign ourselves with, the consumer. And so I'm very, very excited for this thing. And like I said, I've been waiting for this day for 3 years, man. I've just been foaming at the mouth. Just can't wait.
I think one of the biggest things, in my opinion, of what's, what's going to happen is I think that it's going to push a lot of the agents that weren't doing anything anyways. And a lot of the agents that were maybe doing, a couple deals a year. I think it's going to push them out because I think it's going to scare them. I think it's going to leave a lot of the people that, that were, I don't want to say just heavy hitters, but a lot of people that were moving volume to really just kind of feed off of what's left, because again, I've already talked to a lot of people that are just agents that don't do a ton of business already. And they're like, this is terrifying. It's like, is it though? I mean, I get what you're saying, but it's, it's scary if you're not doing anything. If you're already one of those people that's kind of ahead of the curve, it's going to push the rest of those people out.
Yeah, look, if you're an agent that's, like you said, doing 1 or 2 deals a year, you probably don't have, room in the business anyway, but it's really not going to impact them if they're doing 1 or 2 deals a year. So I don't really, that's kind of a neat point in my opinion. But for the agents that really rely heavily on buyers, and so like one of the things that we've been doing for a long time is we've been kind of stacking buyers. And so, we've been ready to make that pivot. And it was funny because we had made that pivot probably 2 or 3 weeks before this lawsuit got handed out.
Right.
Really shifting towards listings. And so I think there's an opportunity for you to build a brand and really shift towards listings, because list to last, but we are so heavy on the buyer side here that, it was a real consideration. But if you look at the actual lawsuit and the ramifications of this thing, basically what it's saying is that saying, hey, we just can't offer compensation on the MLS anymore. Well, you can do that a number of different ways. And so I've had conversations with people high up in Berkshire who is still excluded. They have not settled yet. But from Berkshire, basically what they're saying is that, look, the way they think they're going to manage this thing is that they're going to offer the co-broke on their own website. So basically what's going to happen is you find a house, 123 Main Street, and be like, oh, okay, that's, listed by Kenneth James Realty. I'm going to go to kennethjamesrealty.com, free plug. And then, take a look at the listings there and see what the compensation is. And so you can offer it off market or off MLS, I should say. And so, the way that buyers agents get paid, assuming that the Justice Department doesn't really step in, I don't think is going to change much. It may evolve a little bit, but one thing that it does do that I really am a champion of is really outline what the buyer's agent's going to do in a buyer broker agreement. And so that has to be signed before we even tour a house. So the days of just showing up and saying, hey, let's go look at 123 Main Street, let you in the door, and then have the conversation afterwards is gone. And so I think the agents that are good at selling themselves and their value proposition are going to win. And so it does leave it to the professional, and so I think that's what buyers have been craving is a real professional, not something that's just kind of doing it on the side. And so I'm a champion for it, man. I love it.
Heck yeah.
So do you think buyers agents are going to have to negotiate with their actual client? Like, hey, like there's 2.5 on the table. There's 3 on the table. What does that look like, you think?
Well, can I run a scenario by? Because I think I'm going to dissent with most of the people, because I do think that the Justice Department is going to come in and have a say in this thing. I think what they're going to do is going to say, hey, no longer can the buyer broker compensation be in the seller debit column on a settlement statement. It's going to have to move across the aisle to the buyer debit column. And so when you do that, it really does change the game, right? So let's just say, let's do it for example. Let's just say that you've got a $500,000 house and the compensation, well, we can't even call it compensation, say the seller paid buyer incentives would be 2% or 2.5%. Then you're looking at, anywhere between what, $10,000 and $12,500 worth of seller paid incentives. What I think is going to happen is you're going to say, okay, well, that's what we're offering as a seller for incentives for the buyer. And that can cover all their closing costs. So that closing costs would be now competing with title, with mortgage fees, with, all your recording fees, and everything like that. And so if you looked at it and said, well, if we start out with 2.5%, let's just say title and mortgage are now 1.5 points, you've got that 1 point spread left over for the real estate agent, unless they can negotiate additional compensation out of that seller incentive.
Yeah.
And so I think that is the ideal situation, in my opinion, and so then it really creates a free market where if a seller needs to sell a property faster, well, they just offer a larger, buyer incentive, right?
Yeah.
And so then you can say, okay, well, if the buyer needs additional help paying a buyer agent or help with closing costs, well, I'll just offer 3 or 3.5%. It becomes a true fair market.
Yeah.
And now the buyer's agents are actually competing for that business. And so they're not just saying, hey, I'll just take whatever's in the MLS. Cool. They're saying, no, here's the value I have to offer, and here's my compensation accordingly. So, if you're a full service buyer agent where you're out there, hustling and doing pre-inspections on stuff, and you're handling all the inspection items, and you're actively knocking on doors, looking for off-market properties, you're adding a lot of value to the transaction. That might be worth 3 or 3.5%, or maybe it's a flat fee, or maybe it's a per hour, and say, hey, look, I work at, $80, $100 an hour. You can do that. And so now for the first time ever, you've got buyer's agents literally competing like a lawyer would, like a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that makes it a true competitive environment. And so who wins here is 100% the consumer. And so the guys and girls that haven't built a good brand, so like I know Luke, and obviously Chris, I know you. And so you guys have your own personal brands. The agents that are able to build a strong personal brand and offer a lot of value are going to be the lion's share, beneficiaries of this settlement. The people that were just relying on luck,
hopefully my grandma's friend will sell their property soon and she'll give it to me.
And that's the thing is like, a lot of these agents are just kind of relying on luck. Well, those days are gone, thank God, and so it's going to really help to raise the bar in the entire industry. And I think it's a great thing for everybody, consumers and for real estate agents that are professional agents all alike. So I'm excited.
So Karl, here's a question for you, because this is a question that we've had in our office, is that if they're going to try to start putting this on, let's just say they were mentioning how they want the buyers to potentially pay their own agent, right? Mm-hmm. So the conversation we had is that, you start talking about sales that are going to be sub $300,000-400,000. They don't have any money. They don't have any extra money to throw towards, paying their own agent commissions. And so if that's the case, if that ends up happening, do you think that if they're going to try to, are they going to hire a real estate attorney by the hour to try to help them out? Or, do you think that they're going to try to just represent themselves? If that's the case, if they're trying to represent themselves, our thought was like, they're going to get crushed against, on a Benzer or whatever it is, because they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah. So then you're going to have agents that are going to go out there and say, hey, look, I'll represent you for $500.
Yeah.
And here's the thing too, is that I think that sellers in that lower price range are aware of who their consumer is, who their buyers are, and what that buyer profile looks like. And so they're probably more willing to offer some kind of seller incentive, whether it be, 2.5%, 3%, whatever it is. And again, it comes back to fair market.
Yeah.
A really transparent market. And so, if somebody's property isn't moving, well, just increase the buyer incentive, and so I do think that the way it's set up now will disproportionately disadvantage lower income families, which is the exact opposite intent, right? So, and I said it 3 years ago in my video. I said there's a couple different options here. You got, either, again, sellers can compensate a buyer's broker somehow, whether that's off MLS or a separate agreement or whatever it is, or written into the contract. We can figure that out.
Right. Or
FHA, VA, in conventional Fannie Mae was going to have to step up and say, hey, look, anybody that's looking to compensate a buyer's agent can now roll those fees into the mortgage on top of whatever the current LTV is. So, for example, if FHA is willing to finance 96.5, maybe they're willing to finance 99.5, understanding it's going to put them into a tight equity position though, so I don't know if there's a perfect answer for this, to be quite frank with you and transparent. So there's no good answer for the lower end. There's just no good answer here. I think, it will substantially impact people that are lower income or people who have no or low down payment.
Right. And that's it's unfortunate, because it's going to be tough.
Yeah, it's like throwing a sheep into a wolf den.
It really is. Yeah, exactly.
So Arizona is a unique state, and I'm licensed in 4 states personally. Company is licensed in 5, and so there are states out there that will allow limited representation or some version of dual agency.
Right.
But that raises a lot of conflicts too, and a lot of agents don't have experience or feel comfortable doing some kind of dual representation. So, that problem becomes, let's just look at historically what happened to, Zillow in 2005. Look at what happened to Open Door and OfferPad. When they came into the industry, they really did shake things up, and a lot of agents were pretty salty for a long time, just like they are now. Yeah. And, Zillow gave the buyer more leverage. And so I think this is kind of a similar example where now the buyer's got more leverage. And so, they basically have access to the MLS, right? So we're not the gatekeepers anymore. But, the buyers are probably going to have a little bit more involvement in that transaction, meaning, they're going to be more active in going out and finding that property.
Yeah.
Especially if they're in the lower end. Now, I don't think luxury or high end stuff is really going to, be impacted as much because I think the agents just statistically operate differently.
Right.
But I think that you're right, and the common folk, it's gonna change the way things are done. I do think it does put people at risk if they don't have proper representation. And it's funny that the lawyers handed this shit down, and it's like, lawyers are all about representation, and they literally didn't think 2 steps ahead and be like, wait a minute, this could disadvantage some people. So
yeah. No, exactly.
So you mentioned before we got online that you were already working on scripts and talking with scripts with your agents, and you're already probably, having the conversation in your conference room so that the agents are ready and prepared for this. So what does that look like?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we did script training this morning talking about this exact subject. And so it's a pretty easy conversation, but I do think that the consumer is misinformed, which is really unfortunate. And you do have some politicians, won't name names, coming out and saying, well, the average commission will be cut by $10,000. I don't know where that number came from. That now agents are willing to work for nothing. I don't know where some of this information is coming from.
Yeah.
There's a lot of misinformation. And you go on YouTube and just type in NAR lawsuit, and I looked at it the other day. It was hundreds of thousands of results, and most of them are uninformed. And so, there's really only 2 components to this lawsuit. So let me just reiterate it. First one is you got to have a buyer broker agency agreement. Got to have it before you tour property. So before you even open that door up, you got to sign some kind of agency disclosure. Cool, that's easy. Second part is the only thing it says is you can't offer compensation on the MLS. Okay, so where I'm trying to figure out where the consumer disconnect came from. It was a lot of the news agency just popped on the they were just writing headlines like 6% commissions are no longer. Well, yeah, kinda, but they never really were. I mean, for the last decade or so, we haven't really seen 6% commissions. In rare instances we do for sure, but I actually ran the transaction. So I ran the last 1,000 transactions this company has done, and our compensation was 2.6% on average. So,
right.
but the talking points are pretty simple. The buyers are going to say, hey, look, do I need to compensate you? The answer is probably not. What are your fees? Well, we're going to try to bake them into the purchase price, essentially what it comes down to, and so having those conversations is relatively easy, especially if you're a good agent that offers a lot of value.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you're an agent that's kind of struggling and you're not offering a lot of value, you're just there to open the door, and you're just basically a key with a face on it.
Yeah,
you're gonna have some trouble selling that deal.
Right.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, how do you think that's gonna work in the sense where if they start trying to bake that into the purchase price or the sales price with obviously with appraisals?
Yeah, it kind of is already. Appraisers are very, very fluid, meaning they can adjust very quickly. And so
For sure,
they know what's going on. And so I don't think we're going to see any kind of real issue with appraisals.
Make too big of a difference.
I don't think so. It shouldn't adjust values that much. I mean, the cost, if anything, it makes the cost of doing business cheaper.
Yeah.
So let's just run the scenario. Let's just look what happened to E-Trade. Remember when E-Trade came out? So you had all the traditional brokers that were just freaking out, the Merrill Lynch's and stuff, which I was in the stock market at the time. E-Trade came out and said, hey, we're going to do trades for, I think at the time, it was like $29.
Yeah.
Everybody lost their mind, right? But what it did was it made the market more liquid.
Yeah.
So if a market is more liquid, it's easier to transact. Would prices go up, down, or sideways? I don't know. I'd be tempted to say they might go up.
Yeah.
Because it's easier, it's faster to transact. It's more fluid.
For sure.
And so, people think that the prices are going to come down by 5% or 6% all of a sudden. That's not the case.
Yeah.
That's not the case.
When E-Trade came out, I was trading Microsoft and Cisco daily.
Because you could. For the first time, you could. You'd be in and out. Yeah, you could do a round trip.
Gambling.
The day trading days. Yeah. And to do a round trip back then before E-Trade would probably cost you, depends on the size of lots you're moving, but thousands of dollars to transact.
Right.
Which is a large percentage of your profits. And, when they introduced that, it really did hurt the average broker, right? It's the same thing. It's a very good analog to what happens in the real estate market. And so then for the first time, you've got the E-Trades competing. Now you got Redfin over there saying, hey, they're still going to stick to the 1% thing. And, but also look at their stock down 34% year to date today. Just throwing it out there, I do think it's who can offer the most value, not necessarily charge the lowest price.
Right. Absolutely.
So how are you seeing since we got you on here, let's jump into you. How do you see the real estate market as a whole, just in general? Because it's a little slow this year.
Well, it depends. Can I rewind just a couple of years? So I've been very, very big into kind of direct response marketing, meaning that I put out a piece of advertising and then they've got to, do something to reach me, call, text, email me, go to my website, scan a QR, something like that. And I've been doing that for so long that I got really, really good at it. But recently I watched a documentary, and two documentaries in particular. There was a Jake Paul documentary and a Conor McGregor documentary. I watched them back to back. And I was like, wait a minute, there's something to brand. And I think the people that are going to come out on top of this are the people that have really strong brands. And for the first time in real estate history, I think it's more important than ever. Before you could be very, very transactional. And, that's what we've seen with a lot of companies out there. I won't name names, but they're one transaction at a time. And I think when you build a successful brand and you can do things like, the repeat referral business, be able to scale organically like that, you're going to absolutely crush it. And I think you can take market share. Now, Chris, to answer your question very directly, I think that the market is down substantially. We saw transaction volume come down almost 65% or 70% from the height of 2021. January was the slowest month we've had on record, I think, in Maricopa County, probably since the crash, 2008, 2009.
Right.
It was funny because even back then we were still doing more units, not more volume, but more units.
Yeah.
And so we were down to like 4,200 units in January, I believe, for single family or just residential in general. I'm sorry. And so when you see, that big of a slowdown from the height of like 12,000 units, that's going to put the brakes on a lot of things for a lot of people. But the glimmer of hope here is that I think there's an opportunity for good agents to build strong brands, and the cost of marketing has decreased. So my cost per lead has gone down.
Right.
The big part of that is because my competition has stopped spending money. And so, I can't remember who said it best, and maybe one of you guys remember, but I think it was Warren Buffett says, be cautious when everybody's greedy, be greedy when everybody's cautious.
Yeah.
And that's this scenario right here, April 8th of 2024, 9th, 2024. We're in that scenario where I think we're going all in, man. I'm going all in. And so, the marketing spend that I'm doing is like 10Xing, and I'm really focused more on brand and aligning myself with the consumer, because I feel like I can grab a lot more market share than I have. And so I've made some big mistakes in my life. I think not branding myself and branding my company properly has been the number one mistake I've ever made. Because I spent a lot of money on a lot of direct response when I could be spending it on brand.
Right. It's very interesting. Is that basically what you just said, Chris? I don't know if you remember this. We had probably, gosh, what was it? It was probably 3 months ago now. I'm sorry, I'm blanking. The Green Street. Who was Green Street? Derek. So we had Derek Jar on. Probably 2-3 months ago, and you guys both said something that was very, very similar. So I always remember this. So he had said that when he finds himself doing the best is in times when it's kind of murky waters, when no one really knows what to do. He said that is the times when he has absolutely crushed it. And he said the times I do the worst is when it's like super, when you know you should be doing the right, like when you should be going one way. He's like, that's when I tend to do the worst. He's like, when I crush it is when no one else knows what to do, is when everyone else is very like timid, that, they don't make decisions quickly. He's like, because that's just my personality. I still make those decisions quickly and I still just roll right through it. He's like, always when I crush it. I feel like that's very similar to what you just said as well.
Yeah, 100%. And you said something that really interesting is like the speed to make a decision.
Yeah.
That's huge. Yeah. A lot of people just drag their feet or make no decision, which is still a decision to make no decision.
Yeah.
And then they miss an opportunity. It's horrible.
For sure.
It's horrible.
Well, the good thing about for Luke and I, when stuff gets a little murky, people just take a little bit bigger of a discount, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yep, that's true.
For sure.
For the wholesale world, there's no doubt, because fear is a strong emotion. Mm-hmm. Fear is it's one of the strongest emotions that we have. It's self-preservation. So, it's one of the psychology things I've always used too, is that somebody's more likely to respond not to lose 100,000 than they would be to make 100,000. Right?
That's very
true. You see it in management all the time,
That's
so
very
it's like,
true.
If the two are equal, you think they would put equal pressure there, but they don't.
Oh yeah. Well, one big thing that we use right now when we go on our appointments, when we're trying to buy a property, if they're kind of on the fence, we just say, hey, just be very honest with you, my offer doesn't stand, once I leave. And they're like, whoa, like, why not? And it's like, well, you got to keep in mind, this is an election year. As election year, things change, things slow down quite a bit during election years. So, my offer is good for right now, but as soon as I leave, it's no longer on the table. Or, if you do come back to me later on, there's a good chance it'll go down. Yep. Exactly what you're saying. And then just like that, they're like, okay, you know what? Let me give me like 15 minutes to really think about this, So it does.
100%.
You're not putting like a, unhealthy pressure on, but it's just giving the honest truth though. Cause that's the conversation that Chris and I have regularly is, listen, we've historically, you go 3-4 months up to the election. And then historically 6 months after, things are just slower. They are just slower because you've got people that are way less apt to make a really big decision when they don't know who the next president is, when they don't know, what laws are going to be coming in right after. It's just, it's interesting. It's a different time for sure.
Uncertainty. Yeah, uncertainty is probably the best time to make a lot of money.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, we got any more tips for our buyers agents out there watching?
100%. Yeah, and it goes back to what I told my crew this morning: is you got to be adding a lot of value. How can you add value? Super simple. Be a great negotiator. And so there's a lot of points during the contract where you can be a great negotiator. Obviously, with that initial sales price, right? You want to beat them up as far as you can. And then also on the Binzer. And if, anything on the Binzer comes up, negotiating the heck out of that. Yep. And if that appraisal comes in short, negotiating again. Yeah. I do teach a negotiation class. I'll probably teach it again soon. I'll throw you guys an invite on that. But, we use something called the Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan is a very, very savage thing that I can kind of let some of your wholesalers in on too. Basically what it does is at the last moment when you've got 99.9% of leverage, you can say, you know what? I didn't like that deal. I need to renegotiate at the last minute. I know we're supposed to close tomorrow, but I need another 10 G's off this deal. I can't make it work any other way. shit's already the moving truck. That money's already spent. There's an opportunity there for a lot of people now. You got to be very careful. This could ruin your brand and tarnish your image if you continue to push like that. But we've done a lot of deals where you can negotiate a lot throughout different points of that transaction and add a lot of value. So my value proposition as a buyer's agent is always, I'm going to negotiate the heck out of every deal and try to add more value into the deal through discounts, through inspection items that I renegotiate for you, than the entirety of my commission. And also, you're going to get top-notch concierge type service. And so that means over-communicating. That means really relaying everything that's going on in the transaction, leaving nothing to a guess or an estimation, and being very, very proactive throughout the entire process, and really leaving a very positive emotion, because people remember emotions and how you made them feel, not necessarily what you did for them. And so, I do very, very creative closing gifts too when I work with buyers and even sellers. Right. So that last gift is very, very emotional too. It should be very tied into the transaction. And so every time they use that item or look at that item or come across that thing, they think about you. And so, really getting involved on an emotional level and connecting deeply with your consumer, with your buyers, is going to be very, very good for your brand and to lead to a lot of repeat and referral business. And so that's how you can have that edge. And so there's a massive opportunity. If you're not a good negotiator, just practice negotiating every chance you get. So like I went to Chipotle today. So
I can't wait to hear this.
Dude, I'm always one of those guys that's like, hey, can I have a little bit extra, a little bit extra rice, a little bit extra chicken, a little bit extra sour cream, a little bit extra cheese. And by the end, I got a double burrito, right? And I didn't have to pay extra for it. But like those little practices throughout your life and negotiating everything. You go to Home Depot. I don't think people realize that you can go to Home Depot and you can negotiate big purchases like 10%, FYI. Yeah. A lot of you guys use Home Depot. You can go and do that. And you can do it right at the countertop, right? So have those negotiations. Get into the habit of always negotiating, and you're going to learn little nuances in how to read people very well and find out what that limit is and come back just a little bit from that limit and extract as much value as you can from that transaction. And so be a better negotiator and really connect with your clients. I think that's the biggest takeaway from the whole lawsuit, to be honest with you.
Oh yeah. Negotiating is, people don't understand how important it is in every aspect. Honestly, because that's what I did before I got into real estate. I sold stuff on Craigslist. I did it.
No way.
I swear, I sold stuff on Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace. I bought something on Facebook Marketplace literally 2 days ago on Sunday. I went out, and it's exactly what you're saying though. I just love it. I get off on negotiating, man. It's so much fun. I was negotiating with a cat lady for her water fountain.
Oh my God, no way.
I swear to God, 2 days ago. Oh man.
I love it. Flipping fountains.
Yeah.
Cat ladies.
I bought it for our house. I liked it a lot. So,
Carl, he even negotiates on our friendship since the first day we met. It's been a negotiation.
Hey, that's what I did. But come on, Chris. That's what I did before I met you. All right.
Dude's trying to negotiate his split all the time. Like, I love it. Absolute savage.
Well, agents, I hope you enjoyed this. Just a little thought from my point of view. If you don't have a guy like Carl on your side while you're doing this transition, if you're just hanging your license at just some shop that isn't going to give you any direction or any negotiating skills or anything like that, I think you're missing the boat on this one because, like I said, I've had lunch or coffee with Carl a couple times, and he's got it dialed in. So reach out to him. He's I think it's your email's Carl at Jesse James Realty.
I like Jesse James.
Kenneth James.
Kenneth James.
I'm thinking of the gunslinger, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Carl's a gunslinger. Come on.
I am, dude. We got it down. We got ARs over here.
No, yeah, and guys, obviously for those of you that are on our page too, Carl's our leader for our Viking team. So because Viking team hangs our license with Kenneth James, and so Carl's our he's our leader for the whole brokerage. So he's pretty awesome to work with.
Thank you. Honored and privileged. Genuinely appreciate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for jumping on.
Appreciate you guys. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for sure. We'll do it again soon.
All right, see ya.
Thanks, guys.